Previously on Birds of the Air Travel.
Oh, is it? Oh, it's that one peeking up right there. That's Mount Everest.
When I left off in my last video, we had just arrived back in Kathmandu after completing our Mount Everest base camp trek, and it was kind of surreal to have so many amenities just readily available all the time. Toilet paper provided.
Toilet paper provided?
But the best thing about being back in the city was that we could get a cheeseburger, and after lunch, Vince, Tad, and I pretty much just spent the afternoon lounging around back at Hotel Low Mustang. But Vince and I have never been too good at relaxing on vacation, so after sunset, we went back out into the streets of Tamil to explore the neighborhood a bit. The next day was the beginning of Tihar, which is a 5-day festival of lights that's celebrated in Nepal, and there were already way more lights decorating the streets than there were when we left for our trek. We spent the evening souvenir shopping.
So what do you hit it?
Yeah.
Hit it?
Hit it and yes.
Tad and I each bought ourselves a Tanka painting, which is a style of Tibetan Buddhist painting done on fabric. So we all arrived back in Kathmandu yesterday, which feels extremely strange. It's like such a busy city compared to how peaceful it's been up in the mountains. But Vince and Tad and I do have 2 full days to explore here. So today we slept in because we're pretty exhausted. It felt amazing. And we're just gonna get out and explore some of the major sites of the city at our own pace today. And then we don't really know what we're gonna do tomorrow. I'm looking into maybe like a knife making workshop, maybe a cooking class, I don't know. But whatever we end up doing, I'm sure it'll be fun. And yeah, the weird thing about having these couple of days here is that it does kind of feel like the trip should be over. Like we did the big major thing and it feels like we should be going home. But we have these buffer days built in just in case our itinerary got messed up. So yeah, I guess we get some bonus vacation time. We started the day at the Swayambhunath Stupa, which is often called the Monkey Temple, and in a minute here, you'll see why that is. Oh, more stairs.
A lot of stairs. I think it's steeper too.
The stupa sits on top of a steep hill, so we all got one last chance to walk up a giant staircase together, which is something we've been doing a couple of times a week to train for our trek.
Mount Everest like 3 days ago. I think we can climb some stairs.
You sure? Yeah, but do I want to?
No, I'm not sure.
But climbing the hill was totally worth it because there's so much to see throughout the temple complex. The stupa itself had a beautiful golden spire, and it's thought to have been built during the 5th century AD. It wasn't long before we found some of the monkeys that give the site its nickname, and there were also fantastic panoramic views of the Kathmandu Valley. You can really spend a lot of time wandering around at Swayambhunath because there are several different buildings on the site. We went inside of a monastery and encountered a lot of sculptures and monuments, and of course we were never very far from a monkey. They seemed to be everywhere, and before we left Swayambhunath, Vince managed to get pooped on while we were walking underneath a tree full of monkeys. But a nearby souvenir vendor assured him that getting pooped on by a monkey is good luck, which was very comforting. But we did still make a quick stop back to the hotel so Vince could change into some clothes that didn't have monkey poop on them before we made a really quick visit to see the outside of Kathmandu Durbar Square, which is an historic site with ancient palaces and temples. Then we took a taxi over to the Boudhanath Stupa where we met up with Peasy. He took us to his aunt's restaurant for lunch, and we got to try Riki Kur, which are Sherpa potato pancakes, Sherpa stew, and laughing, which is a Tibetan street food. After lunch, Peasy walked around the stupa with us, and this is the largest stupa in Nepal and one of the largest of its kind in the world, and it's estimated that it was originally constructed in the 5th or 6th century AD, although the Swayambhunath Stupa is older. We said goodbye to Peasy after completing our walk around the stupa and then took another taxi over to Pashupatinath Temple, which is a Hindu temple that sits on the banks of the Bagmati River. We ended up hiring a guide at the entrance to Pashupatinath because we got overwhelmed pretty quickly when we tried to explore the site on our own, and I'm really glad we did because there were so many things going on at this temple that we really needed a local to explain for us. Pashupatinath is the oldest Hindu temple in Kathmandu, and it is dedicated to the Hindu god Shiva. Only Hindus can enter the main temple on the site, but the complex is quite large and there's a lot to see even without going into the temple. One of the most notable things about Pashupatinath is that there are cremation ceremonies taking place here around the clock. Our guide told us that cremation ceremonies are held on the same day that someone passes away, and when the fire is done burning, which takes several hours, the ashes are scattered into the river. In the Hindu faith, cremation releases a soul from its body, and later it will be reborn into a new body. Our guide led us to some of the best places to view the entire site, and along the way he pointed out different things that you can see in the movie Doctor Strange, which was partially filmed on location throughout Kathmandu. Throughout the tour, we saw several sadhus, and they're holy men who have given up worldly pursuits. After the tour of the temple complex was over, we wandered the streets of the city for a little while just to waste some time because we were waiting to return to the temple at sunset to attend the nightly arti ceremony. There were 2 different ceremonies being held in separate locations, and we spent a few minutes at this smaller arti before we headed over to the banks of the river where a huge crowd had gathered. The arti is a ceremony of light where diyas or lamps are waved in a circular motion, and all the while the ceremony was being performed, there were still funeral rites taking place on the other side of the river. When we went back to Tamil for the evening, we had a really delicious dinner, and then we hung out at our hotel's rooftop bar for a while and watched all of the Tihar lights twinkling all over the city. Today's our last day in Kathmandu, and we did end up signing up for that knife making class, so we're doing that this afternoon, and until then, I think we just have some last minute shopping we want to do. We've been taking it easy for the past couple of days because, yeah, it was a pretty intense vacation. Vince and I started the day by picking up a few souvenirs that we still wanted to buy, but for the most part, we just walked around Tamil and watched as people got ready for the second night of Tihar.
The festival he was talking about.
Shop owners were hanging flower garlands on their storefronts, and people were also creating colorful rangoli designs at the entrance to every building. The second day of Tihar is dedicated to honoring dogs, so we saw a lot of dogs wandering around wearing flower garlands. In the afternoon, we went to our knife-making workshop, and I'll put a link to this tour down in the description box. We each got to help out with making our own Khukuri knife to bring home. Khukuri knives are used for all sorts of different things in Nepal, but probably most notably, they're the signature weapon of the Gurkha warrior and the national weapon of Nepal. The local blacksmiths who ran this workshop were great craftsmen, and they made sure that we each got to take home a beautiful knife. Honestly, they did most of the work for us, which was good because if we'd had to make these on our own, they definitely would have turned out like garbage.
More power.
Power!
Donald Trump power.
Nice.
We each got to do some hammering to help shape the blades of our knives, and we also got to help grind the blades as well.
How did you know when to stop?
What?
How did you know when to stop?
It was pretty obvious.
Other than that, the blacksmiths handled heating up the metal and making sure that the shape of the knives came out right. They also did all of the finish work like polishing the metal and attaching the handles. We each got to pick out our initials to stamp onto our blades. And our knives came out sharp enough to slice paper or even to shave with.
Nice. Nice. I've never had a shaved arm before.
At the end of the workshop, we each went home with a beautifully crafted knife and a fun experience to remember. And by the time we made it back to Tamal, it was already evening, which meant that the streets were coming to life with celebration for the holiday. Local kids were going around to different businesses and performing dances, and I even got an opportunity to join in. Tihar happens at the same time as Diwali, and the two holidays are very similar, but Tihar is only celebrated in Nepal and just a few places in India. And of course, there were lots of dogs wearing flower garlands, and the streets were lined with beautiful lights and rangoli designs. People were lighting off firecrackers, which was a bit startling at first, but once I got used to it, it added to the festive atmosphere. All in all, it was just really fun to get to experience this. I'm so glad we just happened to be in Kathmandu during Tihar. This was our last night in Kathmandu, and the next morning we started our journey back home. But I'm really happy that we scheduled these extra couple of days after our trek because Kathmandu is such an energetic city with tons of things to see and do. It was really cool to get to learn about the local culture and to experience the beginning of Tihar, and I'd love to go back sometime and see some different regions in Nepal and also spend more time in Kathmandu.